It's bow time.
Yeah, why are you so excited? I'm not even that excited.
So today we're going to be installing a boost gauge in our C30. We have the shroud that allows us to install the boost gauge where it goes from OZ gauge pods. We have some heat shrink, which we'll use for the wiring. This is the shroud, obviously the boost gauge here. Vacuum line, as well as zip ties and some wiring for the wiring harness. And this is the T that we're going to use to tee the vacuum line into the existing vacuum line. So that way you'll have a reference for the actual boost and vacuum on the gauge. So one of the things we need to do is we need to remove this little piece of plastic as well as the glove box after the fact to then run the vacuum line through the firewall. So to do that, there's a punch right here and there's a punch right here. By that I mean 2 plugs. And all you do is you just take a pick or whatever trim tool you prefer and you press the little dimple in the center and then you just pull down and that releases the tension on the clip. Same thing on this one. Sometimes they get stuck when you push the clip in not far enough, and you can pull the clip off when you get your finger behind it and pull the whole thing out. All right, to take the glove box out, obviously open the glove box, remove the tray that's in there, and then you have a T25 here, T25 here, and then 2 more or 3 more going up. Now, typically you'll have a T25 like this on a torque wrench, or not a torque wrench, but a socket T25. That's nice, because you can just obviously get some torque on it and take it out. But one of these little kits, Harbor Freight makes them. This is a Cobalt kit. They have the T25s built in. And the thing that's nice is you can get yourself an extension that's magnetic. I have this Milwaukee one. And you put a T25 on it and it makes it really easy and nice to pull bolts out of spots like that, because then you don't have to worry about them falling out and then being a huge pain in the butt when you go to take the actual bolt out. And you can be comfortable when you're getting some torque on it, and then when it actually comes all the way out, you don't have to be worrying about dropping it into the car because it's on a magnet. It's a great design. There's 2 more Torxes up in here, 2 up in here. There's one there and one there. So get yourself a panel tool. This one is on Amazon for, I don't know, probably 30 bucks. I've had it for a long time, done a bunch of cars with it. They don't really break unless you misuse them, but the most standard size is like this. And then it looks like this piece needs to come out. So you can just put your panel tool under there and just pull down carefully to make sure that you don't break any of these, because if you break these or bend them, they'll never go back in right, and then it'll just rattle in your car. You just pull this off. This is just same concept, just these 2 right here. It looks like maybe there was a 3rd one, but it's not there anymore. There's a clip right here on the side where the vent is for the door that connects to here. There's a little circle you'll see when you pull. It's actually right behind this piece, the thing that mates to here. There's a clip on it that you can use your plastic tool. It's just a clip that holds this together, and it's in the way of it. It connects to the glove box. Make sure to pull this plug by just depressing this tab and then pulling. Same thing with the one that's down here. Pull after you depress the tab. And this isn't connected to anything, but it's connected with like a little metal clip, which you can just pull up. So now that you have this out, most likely you're gonna have to remove this plastic bin, so that way you can actually access the grommet that's behind it that goes through the firewall. To do that, there's a screw right here and a screw on this side right here. This vent you can just slightly move, and then it looks like there is a screw on this side that you just have to loosen. You don't even have to remove it, but loosen it slightly. Same T25. And when you loosen it like that, you can just slide it right out of its little holder and remove it. Then do these 2. That should just come right out. This gives you access to the firewall. And right back here, where the actual wiring harness is for the car, there is a nice rubber grommet, and you can get access to it by just pulling this back and to the side, and you can see the grommet right through here. And that's where you're gonna run your vacuum line through to do a nice clean install instead of putting it through the door or some other component that would let you get into the inside of the chassis. So on this part of the car, the vacuum line that you need to tee into is underneath this engine cover. I believe it's just a T30, which if you put a T30 on an extension and put it in there, obviously normal 3/8 inch drive, and then just break it loose. Same thing on this one, just break it loose, and then once you've broken it loose, remove it. Careful if the car is warm, because those are going to be warm as well. Then you're going to have tabs on this side of the motor. All you got to do is just pull them. Be careful when doing it so that way you don't break your actual tabs. They just pull back and then up. There's also a tab on the back side of the motor, which you can't access as easy. Because it's in the engine bay, this vacuum line's probably gonna be a little bit greasy. Take yourself a microfiber or a shop towel or whatever. And I like to use electronics cleaner because it's more sensitive than brake cleaner. Brake cleaner can cause rubber lines to dissolve and break down over time. Electronics cleaner is safe for rubber. Just get your rag a little bit wet and then clean it up. You have your vacuum line, which you're gonna tee into, and the tee that comes in the kit. You're gonna tee into here, and you're gonna press the new line that comes in the kit into this port. This port, you press down, you can hear it click, and that's how it locks the new line in, and when you release it, it locks it. So there's a little bit of a recess here in the motor, so it has for the wiring. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the T here, and then we're gonna run the vacuum line through that same recess. Because this is flat on the engine cover, and obviously it's just plastic, but even so, you don't wanna put any kind of like tension on that vacuum. So you'll take your razor blade or any sharp cutting utensil that you prefer and just make a cut. So I'm gonna cut it like right here. And then what you do is you just run the hose in and make sure that the barbs actually grab the rubber. You wouldn't want it to not grab and then give you problems later. If the hose is slightly warm, it'll go on easier because it's more malleable like that. You want it to seat all the way down on both sides. This back one's a little bit more of a pain because you don't really have a lot of slack back here. You have to make sure that it fits just as well. Right there in that back corner is the grommet that you got exposure to from behind the glove box. And that's where we're gonna send the boost gauge wire through. And then it's just gonna tee right into this guy here. So what you're gonna wanna do, this gasket is a double layered gasket is what it feels like after a couple of failed attempts of getting it through. What you're gonna wanna do is just use a little bit more knife. Don't be too scared. You do have to be careful when cutting in, because if you cut in at this angle, you're gonna hit the wiring harness. So you wanna go in straight like this. And when you go through both layers, it should feel no resistance. So you'll know that's how you got through both layers. Then when you pull it out, you should be able to just run your wire through. Just put the wire through. Nice and easy. Didn't take 2 hours to do this. I can feel it all the way through though now. Now that you're done with that, you'll have the wire or the pipe hose coming out right here next to your wiring harness. You can take it and pull it through. It's gonna be a little stiff, but once it gets moving, you get a good handful on it, you can pull it all the way through. Keep on. Once you get the line fed all the way through, or for the most part all the way through, figure out how you want to route it in your engine bay. If you want to zip tie it off to anything, realistically, if you zip tie it off to this wiring harness, it's never going to get hot enough to where it would damage it. And because it's natural curviness, like curliness, you could actually go down and then back up to around with this harness. What we're going to do is we're just going to rotate it this way. That way the vacuum line can go up through here and not give it as much of a unrealistic angle. And the vacuum line can come up through here. If you need some slack, pull it right back out of the cabin. And then you just take this T, like I mentioned before, you press this down so you can hear it click. And then you plug in your wire. And then when you pull it back, you'll see that it released, and now it's nice and snug. All right, so we changed our mind about the routing. We ended up taking this off and taking this wire and moving it underneath this wire, moving this wire from this channel to this front channel. And by doing that, it makes it so this doesn't have such an unnatural kink in it as it did before, and keeps it a little bit smoother going down. Now we're gonna fix up the wiring, use some zip ties, and always have a pair of snips to make sure you get the tails cut off the zip ties. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, just want to keep it away from hot surfaces. The only pipe that really is going to get hot is this coolant pipe right here. There's not really a good way to keep it away from that pipe unless you route this line, I guess, behind the OT pipe, which I might actually do right now, because this pipe behind it's the AC pipe and it'll never get hot. When putting this back, you're going to want to take this hook and find this little slot where it hooks back there. And then same thing on the other side of the motor. It's a little bit of a process to make sure it all clicks together well, but take your time and it should just slot in like that. And again, make sure you do the other side too. And then just take the 2 bolts you took out, the 2 T30s, drop them in there and just hand tighten them to start. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take off the factory version of this and then going to see what the wiring looks like to get to the backside to install this boost gauge. Really, there's not much to it, just the one vacuum line and then the wiring harness, which has just basically positive, neutral, and constant, or I guess ignition, constant, and neutral. I would recommend putting your steering wheel down and back as far as you can just to get yourself as much space as you can. And then there's 2 screws, it seems, 2 T25s maybe. That just one right here at an angle and one right here at an angle. And then it's probably just press fit in, so you just would pull it. Kind of the same thing as the glove box. Just get them started. When it comes to taking this off, get yourself your normal plastic trim tool puller. Get it under there. Feel it around a little bit, see where the clips are. It looks like right in the middle. Once you pop that one out, there it seems to relieve a lot. Probably one on the side somewhere. Yep, like that. And then one on this side is my guess as well. There it goes. And that just pulls right out. Again, you're gonna wanna, it's a little bit of a puzzle to get out because you don't want to scratch anything on the steering wheel, but it does come out easy. Like I was saying, one clip right in the middle there, and then one here, and then one here. So once you get that top one pulled back, the sides just pop out. Here, you can actually see that there's actually pretty good access between here and going to the spot we got behind the radio earlier. So we should be able to run our vacuum line pretty straightforward right from this part of the engine bay or whatever, dashboard, just right here through that panel that we pulled out before. There's probably gonna be a clean way to do it and then a simple way to do it. But just to get the main idea back, you would go through there and then up. And then once you go up, you can kind of chain your hands together and you should be able to reach. And then you're gonna pull it out this side. And this is what I was saying earlier. You're gonna have a lot of spare line, so don't stress about not having enough in the engine bay or not enough in the motor. It also probably is given this much because typically people will install it on the A-pillar. We chose to go to the little surround that goes around the dash cluster because we just thought it would be a cleaner look.
And installing on the A-pillars, the airbags are there.
Yeah, that is another good point. There are airbags behind A-pillars on most cars these days. And if you put something on it, really it's like a grenade. If the airbag goes off, that thing's coming flying at you unless you get some specifically designed pillar mount that, you know, won't come apart after it deploys. Obviously, there's no intention to go and crash the car, but just in case it does happen, you don't want to get yourself a nice little, you know, 5-pound rock or 2-pound rock coming at your head. Okay, so now we have to figure out the wiring for this boost gauge. This part right here can be closed to have that nice OEM look. And we'll obviously wire this with the harness to the boost gauge and tuck it better once we actually do it, probably through back here. But for now, this is just like, you know, to show that it can be done. After doing some research, The best place to get constant power from without having to do anything too haggard is right from the fuse panel. Now, because the glove box is out and because we already moved the carpet earlier, it makes it really easy to get to. So to access it, the normal way to do it would be also just to undo this screw here. It's literally like 1 or 1.5 screw turns to the side, same thing on the left, and the whole fuse panel will come down. In there are little like tabs that it sits on, and it gives you nice access to this whole row. So on different kind of gauges, you will need 12 volt constant and also ignition. The 12 volt constant is usually used for like any memory functions that a gauge may have, such as like a color memory or something along those lines. In this case, our gauge is pretty simple. It just needs power for illumination, and after that it just needs ground. So what we're going to do is we're actually use our constant and our ignition wire, and we're going to put them together into one gauge or into one fuse, and we're going to use a tap. And we got this guy right here, and all you're going to do is you're going to plug that in its place. That I'll show later. And after you pull that out, all you do is you just tap or crimp the wire into there, and then you're good to go. You have ignition, which is usually white or not constant power, and then red, which is constant power, and then black, which is just ground. So we're gonna have to, because of the harness length, we're gonna have to make a little bit of an extension to it. So we're gonna solder the red and white together, and then probably solder right here too, so that way there's no crimps, and it should be good to go. Milwaukee batteries, any Milwaukee battery for that matter, but the M12s are the easiest. It's pretty hard to see, but there is a little plus and minus on these, and you can use them to simulate a 12 volt source just for testing purposes. The right side is red or positive, and then the other side is negative. And so what you can do, just to show, just for like testing purposes, essentially put ground to ground. You can temporarily blip it, or you can actually crimp it down, but this will actually illuminate the gauge as well. So now you can see this is what the gauge will look like once it's installed, and it will function in the same way, basically simplifying the harness down to 2 wires instead of 3 wires. So ground just has to go to the chassis, and this will go to the tap that we add to the car.
Cool.
Pretty cool little thing.
Yeah.
So we're gonna extend this harness by an additional foot, maybe 2 feet at the most. Not even, that's probably too much. But I'm just gonna trim this guy right here, and then after that, just strip it a little bit. This should give us a nice little spot to use the wiring or the soldering iron to then extend that harness with this yellow wire. Unfortunately, I don't have any red wire, but we're just gonna extend it probably by, like I said, about a foot, maybe 2 feet, whatever this would be. So all we're gonna do is just, again, strip this side. Then just take the ends, and then with my trusty soldering iron station here, and you can use any other kind of soldering iron too. It doesn't have to be something this in depth. I only got this because I was doing a wiring harness for some people. Just get some good clean. This is flux based, or flux core I should say, and then you just flow it onto the actual wire. And we'll do the same thing with this one. And before we solder these two together, it's always smart to put some heat shrink on before. It's always smarter to get in the habit of just putting it on beforehand, because you might forget. Just all you gotta do is just flow some solder between the two of them. And now you have a nice solid connection. So then you put your piece of heat shrink on, just get it hot with some open flame. You can also use a heat gun, whichever is easier for you to access. And that's it. Nice solid connection, nice and clean. Nothing you have to worry about going forward. Now just let's repeat the process with this side. Put on your heat shrink, tin your wire, and then do the same with your harness. In this situation, because the gauge doesn't really need a memory function per se, it's just, we're gonna just tie them together to get that physical connection. And then after they're tied together, we're just gonna solder them together to get that physical connection here. Again, it's really just as simple as that. Now you have a nice soldered connection, nice and tight. A little tug test to make sure it's good. And then just go ahead and, again, put your heat shrink over the wiring for yourself. The next step is just taking this off. And in fact, I'm probably gonna strip it a little bit more because this eyelet is for a thicker gauge wire, not such a thin wire. So you can fold the wire over like a couple times on itself to give it to go up in thickness or in gauge, I guess you could say. And then just put it into the socket or the eyelet you're gonna use. Make sure that it's in there nice, like that. And then grab your crimper of choice. I like this guy here because it also strips really nice. I also have a couple other ones that actually might do better, but we'll use this one. I always go from one side to crimp it down like that, and then from the other side, and one more time from the back. Now you know it has a nice solid crimp. You can give it a couple tugs, it's nice and solid, and this will be a great ground. And that concludes building the harness. On the 2013 C30, the fuse location is different, and just from our research that we did prior to it, some light Googling, it said it was actually fuse 77, which makes sense because it's a 15 amp fuse, but for whatever reason on the 2013 car, it's a different fuse. It ended up being fuse 45, which is also a 15 amp fuse. Now, it could be this car, it could be Volvo changing in model years. It also could be the fact that I added this extra fuse on top because before it was just the one that I had. I'm not 100% sure. This is a little bit of an interesting like little jumper because it has two. Usually, at least in my experience, my jumpers have always had one fuse, but that's all we did is just move it from 77 to 45. Your mileage may vary depending on the year of C30 you have. I would say just if you have your owner's manual, that's probably gonna be your best bet for information on which fuse goes where. And this one is good. And then we're gonna plug it in to this one. And you know what? Just for safety or for shits and giggles, we'll put a 10 amp right here. And then just plug it right into the 45 amp block. When it comes to putting this little brick away, it's a little bit of a pain in the butt. Like I said, it has to slide into like a little slot. And then once it does, you can just rotate your little thing. These little lock nuts, 1/4 turn, or it's 1 turn and a quarter. But either way, it's not that many. We'll use a similar route here. We can actually route it through this little gap in the dash to get it to this section of the car. Okay. From here, we can do both at the same time, but we're just gonna push this one behind the little waterfall that Volvo did. Same thing with this guy. And then realistically, just find a hole. There's a nice little gap right here behind the dash where my fingers are, and they actually lead directly to here. You can actually touch your fingers if you put your hand behind, and all you gotta do is just pass the cable through. And when you do that, just pull the excess through. Same thing with the wire for the boost gauge, the actual vacuum line. Just pull the wire right through. Be careful for it not to snag on anything, because if it snags, especially the vacuum line, it could kink. And if the vacuum line kinks, it will not read boost. It will have no vacuum through it. So, and then just make sure that you get it to where you want it. At that time now, basically, you just have to get the ground figured out. And once the ground's figured out, you can put everything back together. So in this car, we're gonna pull this piece off here. It just pops off, just these two clips. Most cars, there's grounding right here. I'm used to the P2 chassis, that's where they all are. In this car, it's actually under here. So you can see there's this little divider. All you gotta do is just gently pry up and pull, and just use your fingers to pry it up so you don't break any clips, and it should just remove. Mason, this is a scam. I didn't break that. That was already broken. Now, behind the carpet, there should usually be some grounds. Mason's a liar. There's not a single ground, fucking dickhead.
I didn't know. I thought there was.
There is one actually down here, I think. Yeah, there is. So on this car, they put it all the way on the floor down here. And you can use those grounds to share and just add your boost gauge to it. So now that we know where we need to get the ground to, we have the ground wire here. It might be a little bit too short for where Volvo put their grounds, so we might have to undo what we did and extend it. Same concept, drop it through and reach on the other side. Typically, you can almost touch your hands. It's able to reach it. Run it behind the plastic if you can, so that way there's no places where it'll get pinched. In this case, I do think it will need to be extended. So in this case, since we need to extend this harness, I'm just gonna trim this piece off. Do it like this. Solder connection between the two of them. The steadier your hands are, the better. And now that the solder is cold, it's connected to wires, nice and snug. Again, and then shrink it with an open flame. You have your harness, your extended harness. Pull back your carpet. Should be pretty straightforward. And you see this foam, you can pull that back after the fact, because ultimately you just need to have access to this bolt. Bolt looks like a 10mm, which I have on this socket here. Just put it on there, break it loose, take your eyelid that you just made, put the bolt through it, add it to the factory ground point. Once you're done getting close to tight, just tighten it, but make sure to not over tighten it because it's just a small bolt. You don't want it to snap. Take your wire that you created and tuck it behind the foam so that way it's nice and clean, and then put your carpet back so that way that's nice and clean. I always line up the first one at the top if I can, because it's going to be the one that moves up and down. It's also why this one is freely moving, whereas these are all freely moving, but more like less space to move. Try to get that one in its spot. Sometimes if you put it in an angle, you can line it up to the hole that it's in. And again, get it in spot, make sure it clicks. And then the rest of them should also click pretty much the same way. And then you know that you have it nice and clicked in. And you can also reinstall this piece at this time as well. Like that. Just slide it in place. At this point, you have your harness up here and you have a nice amount of slack, so you know whereabouts you want to end your harness. So your harness ideally should be something like this, right? What you can do, in my case, I have this little wiring loom that I've had for a while. The way I like to use it is with electrical tape. Some people use zip ties, but you just take yourself a piece of electrical tape, maybe 2 inches long, depending on the size of the wiring. If it's, you know, a thicker wiring loom, not just 3 little wires, then you might need more. Unloom the loom, and then the tightest part of the loom you want to be on the inside because it will naturally roll itself over. So that's how it should fit over itself. And what you can do as well to make it a cleaner installation, you take your tape and you start it on the inside of the loom, so that way it rolls with the length of the loom. So for example, you'd go in the same direction as the loom wants to naturally roll over itself. It's a little bit tedious, but the end result is always worthwhile in my opinion. And again, you know that you went a little bit extra and you made it nice and clean as it's ever going to be. Now, once you have it started, you don't have to worry about it undoing itself. It stays pretty well bound. Like I said, it just naturally wants to roll itself over. So what I always like to do is at that time, find myself the length I'm going to go with. For example, I want it to go all the way down to where I extended the harness, and I'm going to just take it like here. And again, it's not a science. It doesn't have to be necessarily all too precise. Just cut it. And now you have a nice clean harness for your boost gauge. In here, you now have some space. You can tuck it in. With this wiring harness or this vacuum line, for example, we do want to cut it a little short because if you kink it, it'll stop working. For this part, all we're going to do is we're going to take this harness and cut it. Then all you want to do is take your noose around and run your harness or vacuum line as well as your harness through that surround. And then once you've gotten it through, you can see if we can pull the steering wheel out with there, which we can, which definitely gives you a lot more space to take it and do it, and then just slot it back in. In our case, the boost gauge is a little loose in the mount, so we're just gonna put some electrical tape on it. Now all you gotta do with your boost gauge is, again, push the wire in. Now it's nice and snug. Take your harness, plug it into the back of your boost gauge. You should hear it click. And then just take your wires and gently wire them down, and make sure when you're putting your boost gauge in that it's aligned flat, because rotating it will probably give you a bad time, and then just slowly press your boost gauge in. Illumination is there. It would be cool to see if we could somehow switch up the illumination for the gauge pod.
Make it green.
For this part, I imagine it's just LEDs that need to be swapped in the back of the thing, but we would need to do some research first, because you could swap them with white LEDs.
Yeah. And here's how it looks installed. So we did have a bit of an issue when putting it in. As you can see, it's slightly sideways, and with the E-tape we put on it, it's just too tight for it to rotate. And in doing so, as you can kind of see, we did crack this area right here. A little backstory with this gauge cluster: it was from OZ Gauge Pods, and they originally sent it and they put it on this side, whereas the images showcase it on that side. Along with that, the back side of the pod where you connect to the vacuum line was hitting the back of the plastic, so it wouldn't go in. They designed this, I believe, for like the glow I reached out to them, and they were able to make me this new one. It isn't exactly perfect. If you look back here, you can kind of see where they've cut and such. They were very nice about it, and they did, you know, recreate a whole gauge cluster for free. I sent them this gauge with it, and they made it custom for it. I know extra charge, just had to pay for shipping, but it was a very, very, very long process. It was 3 weeks initially to get the first one, and altogether it was about 3 months to get this whole ordeal sorted, and then we ended up cracking it when installing this, as it was too tight. Their customer service was pretty good. They didn't have to remake a whole thing for us for free, especially custom with our gauge, but they did it anyways. But yeah, it does function as it should, reading proper boost levels, and it looks pretty good and functions as it should. I hope this video was helpful to you guys, and stick around because we've got a lot more projects in the works, including the XC90 V8 Ocean Race restoration that we got for $900, and then we've also got V70R manual swap on the way. So get subscribed and stay sweeting.
Oh, you just push this in. How does it work? Oh, do you have to rotate it or something?
Yes.
Oh.
Push it in and turn.
Oh, clutch probably.
No.
Oh, there you go. Oh. We have no illumination.